What if I told you there's a better way to hike the peaks of the Balkans Trail, one that you won't see on the official guide? I fast-packed the trail this summer and I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. In this video I'm going to break down everything you need to know to hike the peaks of the Balkans Trail and to make the most of your experience. So let's start with the basics. What is the peaks of the Balkans Trail? It's a 192-kilometre hiking trail that crosses the borders of 3 countries, Montenegro, Albania and Kosovo. On the trail you'll climb and descend over 8,000 metres. It's a circular route, so you can start at any point or just do it in sections. The trail's divided into 10 stages. I fast-packed it over 5 nights with a slightly shortened route, and I think about 7 to 10 days is about right if you're going to hike the trail. The season runs from May till October, and if you are hiking early, say May or June, just watch out for some snow on those high passes. Because it's a loop, you can do it clockwise or anti-clockwise, and the standard route is to go anti-clockwise, which is what I did, and I don't see any reason to do it differently. Okay, let's talk logistics. Most people start the trail in one of 3 places: Plav in Montenegro, Theth in Albania, or Pej in Kosovo. And you're going to want to fly to the capital city of whichever country you're starting from. So that would be Podgorica in Montenegro, Tirana in Albania, or Pristina in Kosovo. I started in Plav, and there's some benefits to that. There are regular buses from Podgorica, and it's the only big town on the trail, so that means you can stock up with supplies before you hit the trail. But just watch out if you're going to arrive on a Sunday like I did, that means all the shops are going to be closed. If you're going to do the peaks of the Balkans Trail, you need to know about border permits. The nature of this route means you're going to be crossing borders frequently, and you're going to need a permit to cross each border. Now this only applies when you start the day in one country and end the day in another country. You can get the permits yourself, but it's bureaucratic and it's going to eat into your trekking time, so I strongly advise you use a service that can apply for the permits on your behalf. I used Zubulo, I'll put the link down in the description, and they'll apply for your permits for a fee of €5 per border crossing, so that's 3 in total, plus the fee that the Montenegro police levy, which I believe is €13. In total I paid €26 for my border permits. Now you have to apply at least 2 weeks in advance, and you have to give dates for your border crossings. I have heard that there's some flexibility if your plans change, so don't worry too much. And in fact, in the end, I didn't have to show my border permits at all. But don't take the risk. If you're going to do the trail, make sure you've got your permits with you, and that way you won't have any problems. So let's talk about money. There's a few things you need to know here. You must carry cash, and you must get it before you hit the trail because there aren't really ATMs available. The currency is euros in Montenegro and Kosovo, and lek in Albania. I found that you can use euros in Albania, but you just might get change in lek, which you can only use in that country. So how much do you need to hike the peaks of the Balkans? I'm going to break down exactly what I spent, but if you're getting value from this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. In this section, I'm going to give all the costs in euros, and I'll put the dollar and pound values on the screen. I spent 5 nights on the trail, and I spent €350 on guest houses, and I'll say more about what those are in a minute. On top of that, I spent €90 on things like meals and snacks and coffees on the trail. So per day, that breaks down to about €73 for each day spent on the trail. In terms of my other costs, I spent €547 on return flights from Edinburgh to Podgorica. Obviously that will vary depending on where you're coming from. I had a night in Podgorica before and after the trek, so that was about €55 per night. The bus from Podgorica to Plav was €13 each way, and I spent €45 on a taxi from Podgorica airport to my hotel. I got surprised with a €45 fare, which really shouldn't have been more than 15 or 20 euros. Don't make the same mistake I did. Make sure you agree a fare with your driver up front before you get in the taxi. It was late at night, I was tired, I tried to argue it, but I ended up having to pay it, so don't make my mistake, agree your fare up front. So in total I spent about €1,200 for a full week, including flights, hotels, guest houses and all spending money. In terms of the range, the cheapest guest houses I stayed in were €35 a night and the most expensive were €55. Your breakfast is included in the guest house, but the average cost of a dinner was about €15. When you're on the trail, you'll see these red and white flashes that might be painted on rocks or trees. That's to indicate the official route. You'll also see signposts at certain passes, but I would recommend you download a GPX file of the route onto your watch or your smartphone just so that you've always got it there. And I recommend you pick up the Cicerone guide to the peaks of the Balkans. When you buy this guide, you get GPX downloads of all the routes, so you won't get lost. And everything I'm covering in this video is in this book and other things as well. So I took this with me when I trekked and I think it's well worth it. And I'll put the link down below in the description. So I mentioned at the start of the video that the official route isn't necessarily the right one to follow. The route was laid out a long time ago, and since then some variants have emerged, and actually those variants are probably going to give you a better experience than following the official route. So the first of these variants is between Valbona and Keremi in Albania. The official route follows a tarmac road through the valley, but there's an alternative route that goes over the Proslopit Pass, so it's a steep climb but much more scenic. It's the route that I went, and I would definitely recommend you do that. When you're going from Dobrdol in Albania to Milišević in Kosovo, you get the choice of a high route or a low route. Both have their merits. I actually went down the low route and then came back along the high route. But if you have to choose one, I would probably say go with the high route. You're going to have better views for longer. One nice thing about the Peaks of the Balkans route is it almost overlaps in a couple of places. So that means you've got some options for bailouts, or you can create some shorter routes of your own. Before you go on the trek, I definitely recommend looking at some bailout options just in case you have to cut your route short for some reason. Before I went, I made a list of all the bailout options, whether that's getting taxis or cutting across to different parts of the trail. There has been some road building on the route in recent years, and some people choose to take road transfers so that they're not having to walk along tarmac roads. If you want to do that, speak to your guest house and they'll probably be able to arrange a transfer for you. In terms of where you might want to take a road transfer, the first 10 kilometres out of Plav is a steep climb. You would need to have a jeep to transfer you because it's an off-road track. I walked up it, I found it to be fine, but a lot of people do pay for a transfer there. Some people will get a taxi coming into Valbona. There's a bit of a road section, and the village of Valbona is quite spread out over a long distance, so it just depends where your guest house is. And then in the Kosovo section, the Cicerone guidebook recommends that you get a road transfer from Drelaj to Restaurant Tilakeni, and that's just so you're not having to trek along tarmac roads. On the Peaks of the Balkans Trail, you're going to be staying in guest houses, so let's talk about what they are. They're basic accommodation where you'll typically get a bed in a private room. I'll put on screen the names of all the guest houses I stayed in on the trek. When it comes to booking the guest houses, I did most of that on booking.com. The only exception was in Dobrdol, where I had to contact the guest house directly by email. And as with everything on the trek, you just pay with cash when you get there. I had to adjust my itinerary slightly, and I was able to move my dates even when booking.com said that I wasn't able to. So don't worry too much if you have to change your plans a little bit. But of course, do be respectful, and if you're not going to show up, just let the guest house know. Most people at the guest houses speak just enough English for you to get by. It's quite variable, to be honest, but I didn't have any problems. You are pretty reliant on the guest houses for meals, so let's talk about food. At the guest house, your breakfast is always included, and dinner is typically available for an extra fee, which is usually about €15. The food that's available is plentiful. There's lots of fruit and veg, cheese, soups, bread, potatoes, dumplings, some meat. I found that you're sometimes offered a packed lunch from the guest house, but not always, so it definitely pays to carry some food with you. And I think it's worth carrying some snacks on the trail as well, things that you might not be able to get locally, like running gels if you like, or certainly bring some sugary snacks because there wasn't really much available. You will find some cafes on the trail, especially around the Valbona Pass area, and you'll occasionally see farmhouses that are offering teas and coffees, but they're few and far between and you can't really rely on them for your food. The trail is in quite a dry region, so you have to plan ahead for water sources. I recommend you start each day with at least 1.5 litres. You don't want to weigh yourself down too much by carrying a lot of water, but I found that 1.5 litres was about right. In fact, I carried a spare 500ml soft flask all the time after I ran out of water on day 2. Be aware that if you're trekking later in the season, some of the streams or the springs that are on maps might not actually be there, they might have dried up. I trekked in August and a lot of the streams had dried up by then. And it's worth carrying some electrolytes just to replenish those minerals that you're going to lose from sweat. When it comes to staying connected on the trail, if you want a local SIM card, make sure you get one that works in all 3 countries. I'll put the name of the one I used up on the screen. It worked perfectly fine and I found I was able to stay connected most of the time. And the guest houses all had Wi-Fi with the exception of Dobrdol. All 3 countries use the standard Euro plug socket with the 2 round pins, and I had electricity in all my guest houses with the exception of Dobrdol, which again is in that remote location. I think it's worth carrying a small battery bank with you. I was carrying camera equipment to make the video, so it was really important to me that everything stayed charged. So what's it actually like on the trail and how busy is it? The Peaks of the Balkans in my experience was a lot quieter than similar trails I've done, for example Tour de Mont Blanc or the Everest Base Camp trek. It's significantly quieter than those routes. I found it was a little bit busier around Theth and the Valbona Pass, that's a popular area, but the rest of the route I would characterise as quite quiet. In terms of trail conditions, it was mostly stony and dry underfoot. There was a few downed trees and a few overgrown sections, but on the whole it was a very well maintained trail. With it being a mountain region, you have to plan for anything when it comes to the weather. I had very hot and dry conditions, but you can of course get rain. And there may be some lying snow on the ground early in the season. The summer highs are usually about 25 degrees, but I had it as warm as 33 degrees, which was uncomfortably hot. And at night it gets down to about 12 degrees. Keep in mind there's going to be a significant difference between the temperature on the high passes versus the valleys. So it's going to be cooler on the passes, and as you come down into a valley it will get warmer. And at each part of the trail you sleep down in the valley, with the exception of Doberdal where you're up at 1700 metres. I think one underrated part of the trail is the wildlife. I had never seen so many birds and butterflies and grasshoppers on the trail. That was a real highlight for me. You'll also see things like wild blueberries growing by the trail which you can pick and eat. When it comes to gear, I'm not going to do a full gear breakdown because I'm sure you've done similar treks and you know the kinds of things you want to bring. Just a couple of tips though. For footwear, I think trail running shoes are a good option even if you're not actually running. There's very little in the way of mud and your feet are going to be dry most of the time, and it's just going to be a more comfortable option. If you do want to wear boots, I would go with something that's lightweight but still durable. I also saw a lot of people with very heavy packs and a bit overstuffed, and I would just say this is a trail where you're going to be sleeping in guest houses and they're going to be providing your food for you, so you can actually travel quite light on this trek, and I think you're going to have a better time if you go a little bit more minimal. I did the whole trek in a 30-litre fast pack and I was travelling light, although having said that I had all my camera equipment too. But you do have to carry enough kit to keep yourself safe and comfortable because there's really nowhere out on the trail to stock up on supplies. So that's it. Let me know in the comments if you've done the peaks of the Balkans Trail, how you found it, any other tips you want to give, or if you've got any questions you want to ask, I'll do my best to answer them. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.